When you need an SUV that's roomy for your friends and family, durable and ready to carry all your stuff, and equipped for adventure, Honda's here with the 2025 Honda CR-V. CR-V outperforms the pack with more style, more space, and more power, complete with state-of-the-art safety features and a 5-star safety rating. Honda's here for you with the 2025 Honda CR-V. Check it out at your local Honda dealer today.
We are going 100 miles an hour, 88 miles an hour, perhaps, in the Blurryverse. Luke, going full steam. We got a lot of things happening in the Blurryverse. We've got events. We've got a book coming out. We've got a conference. We've got shows. Man, it's getting crazy. How you holding up, Luke?
Oh,
doing all
thanks
right?
for throwing the ball this way. Doing good. It's
Feeling all right?
It's an exciting time, right? I mean, we've got...
How's your British Bulldog doing? Or your...
British Bulldog was a wrestler from the 80s, so that's a pretty good reference. But my French Bulldog, Carl. Is
French Bulldog.
His name's Carl Weathers, and if you're not familiar with the story, Carl Weathers, the actor, passed this year, so R.I.P. But Carl Weathers, the French Bulldog, he carries on. Carries the mantle.
He's doing all right.
Yeah, of course, Carl Weathers was in Rocky and also Predator. So some very classic movies. But yeah, it's a very exciting time in the Blurryverse. So grateful for you guys to join us. As you know, we announced our conference, the second conference for this fall, and those tickets have sold out. It's going to be an amazing time with a great lineup of guests. We're doing 2 days for the first time, Nate.
Yeah.
If you missed out on that, we just announced this week another event. It'll be this summer, Nashville, Tennessee, at the Fisher Center at Belmont University. We are doing the first of its kind.
Squatchella. That's right. If you're used to music festivals and you like, the lineup, and you get that music festival flyer, you're like, oh man, look at all these great bands. We're doing the same thing, but it's going to be the Confessionals. It's going to be Ninjas Are Butterflies, Expanded Perspectives, and us, Blurry Creatures, along with some special guests. We got a couple ideas for special guests, and this week's episode was Zack Bell. Zack's going to kick it off. Veteran with the Sign podcast. He's going to kick off Squatchella. We actually had an episode with him that we recorded a couple months back.
Yeah, Zach's got a new podcast called the After Action Podcast. He's a good friend. If you haven't listened to his previous episode, Zach is a veteran. He has a big Instagram following, an account called Veteran with the Sign where he holds up signs. He's a big advocate for veteran mental health and prevention of veteran suicides is one of his big causes, but he's a great guy who spent some time in Afghanistan, told us all about the things he saw and heard out there, including rumors of the Kandahar Giant and his own UFO story at a forward operating base. So he's coming back. Good friend of the show, great guy, going to be with us at Squatchella, telling paranormal military stories. And excited to have Zack back in the Blurryverse. If you haven't checked out his page or his podcast, go check it out. You won't be disappointed.
So these tickets go on sale for members tomorrow, May 8th, Wednesday morning, Central Time, 10 a.m. If you are a member of the show, you will get emailed a link. So this is coming out tonight. If you're one of those people that listens to the podcast right when it hits your RSS feed, you want to become a member and go to blurrycreatures.com/members. You will get first access to tickets. There's 4+ podcasts on this show. It's going to sell out quick. And it is at one of the best venues in Tennessee, perhaps the South. This venue is impeccable, the Fisher Center.
Nay, the South.
I think so.
It's beautiful. It's a beautiful space. It's going to be an awesome day. Like you said, a music festival, except you're going to see unique podcast episodes, ones you haven't heard, from your favorite paranormal, Bigfoot, high strangeness podcasts, like we mentioned before.
Just like you like it. So you're used to listening to these podcasts. It's going to be just like you're used to, but on stage with everyone there. And you can yell at them. You can throw bananas. You can boo. You can do whatever you want. You might get escorted out. We don't know. But maybe Squatch will be there. Maybe Luke will be there. Wearing.
I think not a maybe. I'll be there.
Wearing some sort of costume.
Okay.
He likes to dress up, so we don't have no idea.
That's true.
What are you going to wear, Luke?
Guilty.
We'll seize it. So you got to see. You got to come to believe. There is a VIP ticket. You can hang out with all the podcasts backstage, and it's like a theater. You can pick your. You can be in the nosebleeds, or you can come down up front, and you can
sit right in the splash zone.
Right. Like Gallagher, Luke might get a mallet and hit a watermelon. We don't know. We have no idea what's going to happen.
Anything's possible, Nate.
So Squatchella.com on Friday. If you are just a normal person, you want to get tickets, you can go to Squatchella.com this Friday. get those tickets. But obviously, Wednesday it hits the feed for members if you want to secure an awesome seat early. Thank you guys, and enjoy this episode with Zack. We'll see you out in the Blurryverse.
Or the Bone Zone.
The history of our Earth is so different from what we can imagine.
The Smithsonian, and if they found out about a large skeleton somewhere, was to go get it.
I'm going to assume at least one person is right, because if one person's right, it busts the paradigm.
It all goes back to the fallen cherub. And the problem with the modern day church, they have a very truncated view of the supernatural.
This backdrop that's just pregnant with all kinds of meaning associated with this Mount Hermon event.
Welcome to Blurry Creatures.
And this guy defects from the kingdom. That's a big deal.
All right, Luke, we got our pal Zack Bell, veteran with the sign, who has a fresh new project, After Action. There's a lot of military stories. We talked to our buddy originally, Tales from the Grid Square, and he gets them sent in daily. He's got books of stories from the military. So Zack, we've had I think a dozen or so vets on the show, or people who've been on the Nimitz when the UFO Tic Tac was recorded, to guys filming these giants in Afghanistan with therms. I love the military stories personally because there's a lot of credibility, and a lot of you guys don't want to talk about this stuff. You don't want to talk about the blurry things you've experienced. And when you do talk about it, my ears perk up. I'm like, we got to pay attention to this because you guys know things and you've seen things, and you guys talk to each other. And so appreciate you being willing to come back on Blurry Creatures and talk about some of these blurry military stories. Zack, welcome back.
If you didn't listen to Zach's first episode, go check it out. Like, we talked about the Kandahar Giant.
Yeah.
And then when Zack was deployed to Afghanistan, he actually had a pretty wild UFO experience. That's also on that episode. So Zack's a good friend in the real world, also a friend of the show. Of course, the veteran with the sign, as Nate said, and then he's got a brand new podcast that he's got out. But welcome back, Zack. Good to have you. I know you've got more blurriness for us, and we're excited to have you back on the show.
Dude, I'm super excited to be here. I've done a lot of things in my life. I'm blessed, but getting blurry, it's the number one thing that people have messaged me about in person, talk to me about it, anything. Dude, the blurry gang is strong.
They need more signs. Need more veteran signs is what we need. But you were saying in our pre-roll, Zack, that you, after the show, you ended up having some buddies reach back out, and you actually you had another story that you were reminded of, and would love to dive into that. And then we're going to get into some of the secret places here in the States where some military things have been going on, and then also perhaps some of the more haunted places on the planet, if you use that term, are on military bases. So Zachary Bell, great to have you back on the show.
That's 3 intros for you, Zack. I hope you feel
3
loved.
intros. Yeah, no, that's good. Again,
2 shows, 3 intros. That's what
2
we're doing
shows,
here.
3 intros. Again, I can't thank y'all enough, and and appreciate you guys letting me on here, talk about all this stuff. And it is what motivated me to do my podcast, the After Action podcast. But yeah, and we'll get into that and stuff because you guys tell stories in a way that really turned me on. Luke is the one who it was after we all sat down for lunch. I don't want to say the place because y'all's reach is scary. I don't want our place to get swarmed. But our lunch spot, he's like, you should do it. And I was like, all right, yeah, I'm going to really look into it. So I can't thank you guys enough. But again, the effects of it were, so the giant in Kandahar story, I had heard that, my friends and I, from the locals in 2008. Now, Afghans in particular are very, very superstitious people, and rightly so. Like you were saying, Luke, it's a wild, unchanged, unterraformed place, and I'm convinced that when it all comes to an end, it'll still be the exact same way. It is a wild, unforgiving, beautiful, dangerous place to live, and things are just that way. So when you hear they're talking about vampires or weird stuff, whatever, they don't know what our NVGs are. They don't know anything. But they had told that story, and it wasn't until I heard, many years later that something that I thought was local folklore was just common knowledge there is something that happened to other people. So after we did the episode, one of my good friends who was there with me when the pyramid structure, I can't remember what it's called now, was circling our place. He reminded me about a very similar incident, not similar incident, a different incident that had happened on our first tour in 2008. So in March of 2008, we were in a town called Garmsar, Afghanistan, and it's in Helmand province. And Helmand's kind of mostly the same. There's not really a lot of hills and stuff, especially that part where we're in the south. It's flat because most of it's agricultural. So they're harvesting mainly poppy for opium.
Yeah.
You know, they have other things too, but that's mainly it. We were just landing, and at that time, no one had been there for years. I don't think anyone had actually been there for decades, but people have been in Afghanistan, but not that part of it in particular. And like, we were like, so what happens is you land in a place, and then like the objective is to like clear, hold, and build. That was the strategy we were using at that time in the global war on terror. Was like, we would land in a town, clear it of any enemy that we could find, and we would hold as we set up different positions, and then you rearrange the battle space. Like, Alpha company goes here, Bravo company goes there, so forth and so on. And then you like literally rebuild it, and then you build connections with the local populace as to try and, win the hearts and minds. So that was what we were doing. So like the first month of the mission, you're just like walking around everywhere, and you would see like crazy stuff. You'd see, like you'd be in the like middle of nowhere, and then like the world would just end. It was just flat. And then one of these trips we got out there, we were like on the limit of our area of operations. We had just met with this dude who like came out, and he was missing like most of the fingers on both of his hands. And he was like, "I'm not scared of you. I used to kill Russians. This is before you were even born." Like, that's what he was saying to us. So I was like, whoa, this place is wild, right? I had no idea. But we were holding this place we called the Alamo for a while. And it was gnarly. It was gnarly. Like, we were there. We had an element of like 8 people. Yeah, like 8 people, and we should have had like 30, and we did not have that many. And so my rifle squad of 8 people was moved there as we rearranged the battle space. Like, my platoon was going to take like this area of operations, but in the meantime, we had to like go there. Someone backfilled us and like replaced them, and we were going to move to a different spot. And so we just go there, and like we spend this whole day there in like a very, very chaotic firefight, like 24 hours of like consecutive just nightmare stuff. It was crazy. I was even on a wall we were shooting from, and this guy like kicked open this door. He kicks open his door, and he like steps out, and he pops an RPG at us. And I was just like, whoa, like, and so anything that's shot, the projectile has like an arc to it. Anything like as you see it. And so like as he's shooting like straight at us, I remember it swung out as I was looking at it, like to his left, to my right. And I was like, whoa. The trajectory is like, it's just like the movies. It left like a smoke trail, and it hit like right in front of me and my squad leader, like blew us back. And again, they built these walls of dirt since the dawn of time. We didn't know how strong they were, but thankfully it was. But we got blown back, and I got knocked out for a little bit, and I just woke up, and we just kept going. But we ended up holding that position for a significant amount of time. And that's why it was called the Alamo, because we had like one wall of protection and then no cover in the back. So the cover in the back was just guys holding security, so they could essentially walk up on us any given moment. And we held that for 24 hours, almost over that. Well, we were there, we engaged the guy at the RPG and stuff, and like rotating. So like when you're that tired, obviously the main concern is fatigue, right? And you want to stay sharp, not mess up anything. So during the day, we would hold post, which is just, like you're just like on a wall, just like looking, and they were literally right there in front of us. They couldn't have been more than, a football field's length, actually about a football field's length from us, end zone to end zone. And we're just like looking at them, they're looking at us, and whenever they come out, we shoot at them, blah, blah, blah. And we're just like holding this spot for like what seems like forever. Well, you do like 4-hour shifts during the day, and then 3, and then 2. Well, at night we're rotating every hour, right? You're not getting sleep, but you're sharp. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because it's too risky to do anything. In this scenario, it was too risky to put people down for 2 hours and then wake them up, or for 3 or 4 or whatever. So we're like rotating through, and you're just kind of sitting there with your friend. You're like looking, and it's late in the night, and usually they don't move at night to engage us because they know that we have optics and they can see pretty well, the Taliban and stuff, because there's no noise or light pollution. So it's just the moon gets out, they can see pretty well. But even still, just usually they don't risk it. It's just
you have the advantage, right?
We have the advantage. There's no real point in doing it.
Right.
And honestly, it's a lot of times that's when farmers are doing a lot of their like movements of like moving cattle and stuff. Or not cattle, moving like goats or sheep or whatever they got to move their livestock. So because it's so sweltering hot, they'll wait till night and like see like 40 goats walking down the road, which, we ended up using as a way to like clear routes for IEDs. Is we would
send the goats out.
We would send, hey, you got 100 goats times 4. If there's something there, they're going to hit it. So we would make them walk in front of us every now and then. And that didn't ever happen. It was because they honestly don't want to hurt the relationship with the local populace. So me and my friend were there. We're holding the Alamo, and there's this field, and it's got some type of grain or something right there. Because I remember it was tall, and like we're looking, and the main things you're focused on is like your avenues of approach, which are you can see in the field where they would walk into the field. You can see where the road was. It ran parallel to the right and left of it, and just like access points. And we're just hanging out. Be like, okay. And then all of a sudden, stuff starts happening. Not like a little bit of stuff. Now, I can't stress the importance of how unnaturally scary this moment was. And I can't believe I forgot it. But again, there's no noise. There's no light. There's nothing. There's not like, the best way I can equate to it is it's kind of like you're all dad mode and someone pulls in your driveway and you're like, what are you like?
Yeah.
It's jarring. I'm sitting there and I look at my friend. He looks at me. His name's Zack too. His name's Zachary Groove. He's one of the best people in the world. And he looks at me and we look at him, and like, so we start like, looking around. The plants are moving unnaturally to the wind and everything else around it, but we can't see anything. Like it looks like someone's walking through the field, getting closer and closer to us. Right. And again, no one's making a noise, and you can just hear someone like, it's like Field of Dreams. There's no Kevin Costner, but I got Field of Dreams. Right.
I was gonna say, Zach, it sounds like, like when you see these, I'm trying to think, is it's like signs or
signs?
Even
Yes.
Like where the cornfield's moving, things are moving through the cornfield, and they're coming towards you, but you don't see what's there.
Yeah, and we had even set up like distances based on these things, like they're called phase lines, and so we had gauged distances of like this is for this, like of certain things that we could use to like shoot them or like engage certain weapons, and all of it was danger close, but it was like that was close. So like we start looking at them, so we wake up some people, we're like, hey, nobody was really asleep, but there's something out here. And so we put more people on the wall, and then everyone else is looking at it. Looks like people are walking straight to us in rows, like they're on a line walking straight to us. And so we put loom in the air. We called for everything, put some loom in the air, and that was then it all stopped. It was the weirdest, craziest thing I had ever seen.
Lumineers when they shoot the flares or whatever.
Yeah, so you can shoot a flare, or like I think this one came off just like a pop up or whatever. We were really just trying to figure out what it was, because at first we thought it was like animals, right? And this one guy swears. This one guy swears. I want to say his name in case he didn't want to be named. He swears that he heard children's voices and saw children like walking through the field. Like that was it. All I know for sure is that it looked like someone was coming at us, and then it stopped, because like it was. I can't just how dangerous that whole day was, but it was weird. And
send in the ghosts.
Well, there was a school. Here's the thing now, and I don't know if we want to keep this in the episode or not, but there was a school. I'll let you decide to cut it. But there was a school it was a known place where the Taliban would actually execute kids that went to the school, and because they never wanted them to learn. So that was literally, we didn't know it then because we eventually pushed into this area where we were, and we found a bunch of machine gun bunkers that were set up. The enemy was trying to bait us to come out. So like if we would hit this open field, there's machine guns lined up on each other that were like just going to mow us down. But there was a school like right there in that village that was built by like, I don't know, some NGO, was very, very nice. They had like a well, but they had done public executions there because they didn't want the kids to go to school.
The trauma that we hear about hauntings, they go hand in hand. So it would make a lot of sense that if this area was sort of used for that horrible, it's not fun to talk about, but these horrible things that happen to people.
Yes.
A lot of times ghosts look confused too. They don't really know what people describe them as almost being like lost and sort of looking for something, which makes them creepier, right? Because they appear little kids or like a woman in white or like there's even hauntings of boats, ships, and trains. It's almost like it's out of place. It shouldn't be there, but it's not, a werewolf creature coming out of the woods like a skinwalker type thing. It's haunting you, or it's really subtle. It's really like it's almost creepier because you wouldn't expect it.
I think it has something to do with frequencies is what I think. Like I always think that we think about things as like vertical integration. I think of it as much more transdimensional stuff, if that makes sense. This is just me, in the sense of like in a place where it's basically raw earth is how I think about that part of the world, where there was only like one cell phone tower. I think there's two now. There's so little like man-made interference that their connection to the earth and everything it's literally how they make a living. It's literally, their houses are made out of dirt and water, which makes them mud, which makes them bricks. Like they are connected to it. I think there's something to that. They're like in tune. They're like at a higher frequency. Does that make sense? Like, I feel like these things like seep through the earth because there's less concrete, less paved paradises and put up parking lots. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't know. It's just weird. I mean, I've been to so many different countries, like for, not just in the military, outside of it. And so you gain a certain appreciation for things, but the raw beauty of that part of the world is something that I've always said is the most beautiful place in the world.
Zach, so let me ask you about this though. So when you guys have this experience as a group experience, obviously you've got, you kind of rouse the other guys from sort of their twilight, I imagine. What kind of discussion do you guys have? It's just like, that was weird. Like,
I remember being like, don't fall asleep. Like there's something out there is what we kept saying to each other. There's something, we don't know what it is. It was weird. You're also like weighing factors of like, we are tired, but like that was unusual. You know what I mean? So like, it's one thing.
A group hallucination. You're like,
you don't have group hallucinations. That's the thing. Like I remember when I was looking at it, so we have a IR. It's pretty well known infrared lasers on your weapons. So you can, at night when your NVGs are on, you can see where it's pointing. And I remember turning mine there and he turned his there too. So we both wouldn't have seen him for no reason, if that makes sense.
This is a crazy place though. Like if you ever do any research on Helmand where you guys were, I mean, 39% of the world's heroin comes from this area. So you have that going on. Is also, there's a New York Times article, and we were talking about this pre-roll. What happens there is they see muzzle flashes, flares. It's like their entire position's being attacked. Marines are ducking for cover, but there's no physical or auditory evidence, just lights, and then it ends. And then they hear people hearing Russian whispered into their ears, which braze uraze, which means drop your weapon, if I have that right or not. And then you have got these wild stories in this place. And when you came on before, we talked about the giants, as you mentioned in the beginning, but also, this UFO experience. And then there are a ton of sort of UFO, UAP experiences as well. And one of the things you mentioned, I think it's important to remember, is that because there's no infrastructure there, then you have no light pollution, as you said. You have this very sort of raw, untouched place, and for whatever reason, there's a lot of bizarro things happen. Whether it's the fact that there was massacres of children, as you said, massacres of soldiers there, massacres of it's this place of trauma. People have these experiences. You have these 8 different guys that have the same experience, and then it makes me think of either like Field of Dreams or like what is it in Lost? You ever watch Lost?
Yeah.
Where there's things moving. It's like the smoke monsters moving through the jungle, and you're like, dude, there's something out here, and it's terrifying because you don't see it. It's almost more. It's like signs before you see the aliens. You're like, it's so terrifying, and they show them, and you're like, dang it, you ruined the movie for me, maybe. But once you see it, it's sort of the unknown is just as terrifying as maybe actually seeing something.
Yeah, it's funny you talk about the OP Rock place. So when we were there in 2008, 2 platoons were up at, we called it Apache North. That was our call sign. They were at Apache North and we were at Apache South. Now I saw OP Rock. I know exactly where it is. the guy that's being interviewed in the New York Times article, I know the guy who wrote it. We went to boot camp together, and the guy he interviews was my first team leader, who basically taught me the trade of being an infantry rifleman. And I remember the way they would talk about it, like none of it made sense. It's just the main thing they would say, because I didn't get to go in it because we were just never there. But they would talk about like just how absolutely terrifying it was. And my best friends, people that are scared of nothing, were like, dude, I don't want to be there at night. I don't want to go to the Rock at night. I don't want to, it's scary. And I was like, come on, don't be whatever, you baby. And they're like, no, dude, like you have no idea. You have no idea how bad this place is at night. And I was like, okay.
I think the perspective on that, Zach, too, is you guys are deployed. You're at war.
Yeah.
So the idea that you're already sort of scared in some ways, right? Because you're on a daily basis doing patrols, doing tasks that could end up in your own demise. To be blunt. But then to be so terrified on top of that by, I don't want to be somewhere at night, from a soldier standpoint, it to me is sort of a whole nother level of, it's not like you're already sort of in this mode of being perpetually worried about losing your own life. And then there's this place.
Yeah. You can't shoot ghosts. I hate to be the guy. I don't want to be the unblurry here, but in my experience, you can't shoot ghosts.
Right. I think your initial reaction is like, especially in these southern states where everyone's packing. But we have all these weird stories that get emailed to us, Zach, where like one yesterday, guy's driving along, hits like a smoke figure, and it looks like it's an entity, but it like blows up into this smoke and then goes over the front of his car, and it seems like it's actually there. It's a thing. It's walking. It's moving. But it really, at the end of the day, it's not there. I don't know how to make sense of these things. It's like
dimension, transdimensional. I'm telling you, just they're there and they're not.
And even that argument is difficult. Some people in our channels think everything's transdimensional, and I'm like, well, Bigfoot's taking dumps here and leaving footprints. So
yeah, I mean, that's why my bathroom's in a different part of my house. It makes sense. I don't sleep.
Let's be practical here. Yeah.
If you were Bigfoot and you could go to different dimensions, you would have a dimension just for pooping. Is what I'm saying.
Yeah, it makes sense. It makes sense, dude. It's like you have your space. Yeah.
Like Bigfoot leaves Dukes in our dimension. That was his T-shirt idea.
That's probably how he calls it. He's like, I gotta go check out old Earth again.
It's like when the Lord of the Rings, when they call in the dead kings, come on, fight with us. And we get biblical a lot on our show, Zach. And there's a lot of biblical stories where it's not just, it's like they're calling in help from the heavenly realms. Come down, we got to win this war. We need help.
Yeah.
There's something to it. I think we just have so many distractions in the world that like we're just too distracting to notice all the stuff that's blurry right in front of us, dude.
Well, that is the endless debate on our show, because a lot of it you have to kind of expand your paradigm, and in the moment when you're doing interviews and go, okay, I have this idea of I think this is what it is, and we could all be so hard and fast about, no, this is what I believe these entities to be. This is their capabilities and sort of their personality. Then you get an email and you get a story, and you're like, well, if this is true, and this happened, and then you get another one, and you're like, okay, something's going on.
What do you mean they're peeling faces? Yeah.
Yeah.
And a lot of people just like, oh yeah, the Miami incident didn't happen. I'm like, something happened. They sent a lot of cops. It sounds like there was 300 people that made a panicked phone call, and you had the whole, South End squad show up. And that's the problem with our world now. We'll never get the official story about anything anymore.
Well, the only way you're ever going to hear the truth is if you interview Cat Williams. So he just is a crazy thing. He's 2 years old. It's like, I can still run a 440. Like, all right, dude.
That was a pretty good impression.
Yeah. Well, I always think that the reason there's so many stories, and in particular in Afghanistan, I'm sure there are in Iraq and other places, but in Afghanistan in particular, I think it's directly attributed to what Luke said. It is the place where like all empires have fallen. Like no one's ever since the dawn of creation that we're aware of been able to conquer that place. And so then I just imagine like a mass gathering of spirits or energy like in one spot that's just pouring out. Like the
graveyard of empires.
Yeah,
dude.
It can't be contained. It cannot be contained. I mean, I can't remember who said it. Was it Alexander the Great that said it first? I think it might.
Maybe. But it's just like you think about the amount of trauma, and when that's what Nate said, like you have these a lot of times people believe that you have what we consider or call ghosts have to do with some sort of trauma. And this is the same thing. We talked about the woman in white, Nate, and we talked with Dr. Mike Heiser about unclean spirits and ghosts and human spirits and what's happening here. And we sort of tried to unpack a lot of that. But what seems to come up time and time again is there's association with trauma. There seems to be some sort of spiritual loop that happens, which is why you have like things like Gettysburg, where people will claim they see these battles happening again, right? And these people aren't these ghosts, if you will, these spirits aren't aware of people or anyone watching. It's like there's this loop of time that continue where they're fighting this battle again, and there was so much death and carnage and trauma, and I don't know we'll ever really know why that happens, but we know that it does. You know, as Nate said, you don't always get the real story. We'll never really know the narrative because oftentimes we're told, you know, what people want us to believe, right? And one of the things that we talked about with you is that there's a lot of secrets the military is keeping. We know this. This is part of our show. You actually worked on a few places and bases where, not too far from where we are in Middle Tennessee.
Yeah.
Where the military is keeping secrets under our own nose when it comes to the storage.
Nuclear weapons.
Top secret nuclear weapons.
Yeah.
Weaponry. And so I want to chat a little bit about that and then potentially get into some other secrets as far as some of the most haunted places on Earth in the military spaces.
Some say Genesis 6 is the Rosetta Stone of the Old Testament, but that's not the Rosetta Stone we're talking about today. We're talking about the software, Rosetta Stone. It helps you learn another language fast.
Would it come in handy? Maybe it'd come in handy if you are traveling abroad, say a trip with the Blurry guys to Peru or Costa Rica, perhaps. Maybe you want to learn Spanish. Rosetta Stone has been the trusted expert in language learning for 30 years with millions of users and 25 languages offered, including Spanish, French, Italian, German, Korean, Chinese, Japanese, Dutch, Arabic, Polish, and more.
That's right. The built-in true accent feature gives you feedback on your pronunciation.
Nate, you say gracias?
Yeah.
Just making sure you're saying it right.
Rosetta Stone's convenient desktop app options mean you can learn anytime, anywhere. Luke, could be great if we could do this podcast in Spanish, and one of the best ways to do that is Rosetta Stone.
And one of the things great about the software is it not only is the fastest way to learn a language, but it's personalized, right? It helps you recognize how you can improve pronunciation. There's short, flexible lessons that start at just 10 minutes at a time. And for us, look, we want to take this blurry bus all over the world. And one way to do that effectively is to be able to speak the languages of the world. So Rosetta Stone is our chosen software of choice if we're learning another language.
Don't put off learning that language. There's no better time right now than to get started. Blurry Creatures listeners get Rosetta Stone's lifetime membership for 50% off. Visit rosettastone.com/today.
That's 50% off unlimited access to 25 language courses for the rest of your life. Redeem your 50% off Rosetta Stone at rosettastone.com/today.
So I do a lot of work with the Army. They've been really, really kind to me. Fort Campbell, you know, everyone who's at Fort Campbell says they're an hour from Nashville, but that's not true.
That is not true.
It's not true. It is 90 hard minutes, clawing up 24 to get there. And so they've granted me like so much access and stuff. And the base is huge. And it's in the Army in particular, like I think the Marine Corps at its peak had 250,000. The Army was right at 1 million at its peak. So, I mean, whatever that is now, it's that same scale. And so, I get access, like I've gone to machine gun ranges and mortar ranges and like all the stuff that a person could do. And they have a museum on the base. And they had told us like, hey, do you know there's nuclear sites here? And I was like, no, I don't. I've never, I don't have that knowledge in the back of my pocket. And they're like, oh yeah, we used to store nuclear weapons here. And I was like, okay, whatever. And they're like, would you like to go see the storage facilities? And I was like, yes, I would. So I would love to see that. And so this guy, this historian, I think he's a retired colonel. It's like, he's like the head of the museum, the civilian guy. And like, he has like, his Army detachment back together works with him too. But like, we got a tour of what used to be, I think it used to be called the Clarksville base was the name of it. Let me see. Yeah. And it was where it is where they used to store nuclear weapons for like 20 years or so. And like no one knew.
Wow.
Not even the Army knew what was going on there, because the way these things work is that it was a base in the center of the Army base that had a Marine security detachment attached to it of like 300 people, and that was that Marine unit's job, was to like from the ground to all the way up in the air, they owned all of that space.
And this is an important point because you were a Marine, Zach,
Yes.
and what you told me when we were talking about this is that the Marines actually are tasked with guarding all the nuclear sites, correct?
Yes. Well, yeah, except for like the stuff in the bunkers, but yeah, I mean, like there's a lot of stuff that we're attached to, like Bangor, Maine's one of them. There's a place in Georgia, there's a place in Washington, anywhere where there's like a massive amount of like these types of weapons, there's usually a Marine security element. Because I know guys who were like on the teams, the security elements that would be attached there, and like they would do like 7-day rotations where they're in what's called like a limited area. The LA is, they're like, we go in for LA for 7 days and then come out, and they would just guard these places where they have like, and this is all common knowledge, so I don't want to get like canceled by anyone who's like, you can't say the secrets, but like one place where they had a bunch of subs, they were always scared. If you fell in the water, you would get drugged down to the bottom by the aquatic animals they had trained to pin you at the bottom.
What?
In case like someone, in case someone like was trying to swim in and get a sub or gain access. I don't know if it was dolphins or seals, whatever it was, but like they would just pin you at the bottom until you ran out of air.
Drown you.
Yeah. And then bring you up. And that's what they were trained to do. And they're always like, don't fall in. Like,
dude, that's wild.
Yeah. I don't know how you teach an animal to do that either. Like, but that's like very, very well known. And so, again, so we went on tours, and I'll send you. I sent Luke the photos, but it's the most like moving military nuclear facility thing I've ever seen. Like we drove to a different part of the base, so we started out at like their entry point of the train tracks where they would receive the pieces of the materials. They
like
would
the uranium?
Yeah, they would receive it at this train yard, and they had like this big scooper thing that just like drops over the train track, and would pick it up and then move it to another one, and or put it on trucks or whatever. And we started there, and I was like, dude, whatever. And when we were there, the guy's like telling us a story of like what happened, which I can tell you the story now. I guess it makes sense. But they once had a spill. They were moving waste, and the spill, they didn't have a spill, and some of it like fell off. And so this young soldier or whoever it was tasked with removing this waste and taking it to where it had to go. They had cleaned up, and like the train had gone, but they had to get rid of it, take it to a different site. And this is all what he's telling us. So it's like declassified and blah, 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 blah. But he said that this guy had gone out in town to meet his girlfriend, and he stayed a little bit too long at his lady's house, and it was this dog had gotten into it and had eaten some of this waste. And so there was then a manhunt to find this dog, so it didn't start a nuclear event. Because it was just this werewolf.
Wow.
All because this dude went down to like sign to go see old girl. You know, like,
and then a jar of it fell off the truck, rolled into the sewer, and then some turtles found.
I mean, but
secret
like,
of the ooze.
It sounds crazy, but honestly, like when you think of it, it's just like a guy. He's a young dude. He doesn't know what's in his truck. He's like, take it to this place, right? I mean, this is the 50s is when they were at this place. So they're like, you know, make sure you smoke extra good when you're driving. You know, like
right. Yeah.
So he's just like, oh, I'm just in the military, like doing his thing. And he's like, I'm going to go see Betty Sue. And he goes to see her. And then, it's, you know, it's just like the beautiful magic of life. It's like one of those commercials where you pay it forward. Like weird things happen. And it's just a dog just being like, mum, 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 mum. And like they had to hunt.
When Dogman's created. Yeah, it's
They said they caught the dog. They didn't say what type of dog they caught. That's all I know.
Is there something else happening at these nuclear bases? Because I remember in college, right? I went to San Luis Obispo, Cal Poly.
Okay.
One of my good friends, him and his buddy decided to hike up the coast. There's a power plant in San Luis Obispo. So he comes around the corner, and there's like 10 guys drawing like M16s on him. And they're like, "What are you doing out here?" Like, just two college kids hiking the beach. And I remember asking him after the fact, like, it seemed like an overreaction from two college kids just hiking along the beach. He's like, we don't know, but whatever we did, we crossed the line, and we almost got in big trouble. Yeah, I get it. It's a nuclear base, but it seems like there was something else going on.
Well, and all those guys, all that stuff now, I believe, falls under the Department of Energy. So they kind of have their own like semi-paramilitary security task force associated with them that because they're always moving the materials from site to site to site at any given moment, and like that's a whole thing. So they have federal powers. I know that, like when you work for the DOE with their security detail. So like they got really lucky that they just didn't get a letter sent home to their parents like, your family's gone now or something. But
what's interesting about this, Zach and Nate, I think is that, this is basically under our nose, Nate, right here at Fort Campbell, not too far from where we live. And we would have had no idea. But what seems to happen, and we talked about sort of Zach when I was talking to you this earlier this week, was that, and we talked to L.A. Marzulli about this, Nate, that wherever these nuclear weapons are stored or kept, we have these UFO, UAP sort of phenomena that show up, and a lot of the stories that come out of these places they deactivate and turn off the warheads. They turn off these things. And actually, I grew up not too far from a Titan missile spot in Chico, California. We knew it was out there. It had been decommissioned. One of the things that was fun before they filled up with concrete is, in high school, was to go out there and sneak into it. And it was halfway filled up with water, but it was a complete shaft with rooms and all abandoned stuff, but they had housed Cold War nukes not too far from Chico, California. It's like we don't know they're there, but somehow this UFO activity follows these and knows these things are there, and then it's deactivated. And LA had an interesting theory about a nuclear event and how that could potentially kick off what we see in the Book of Revelation, etc. But Zach, I think there's a question here that as a military guy, and how much do you think we don't know about secret places and secret things that happen within the military, even as being an enlisted guy and a Marine? How much do you think if you were to put a percentage on it, do you think we don't know?
It's a really good question. One of the things the military does well is that it really kind of segregates and isolates information to its own detriment, though. Like
compartmentalizes, right?
Compartmentalization, yeah. Like it'll keep stuff away. I mean, like just with the story with the base, like there were guys that were stationed there their whole careers that didn't know about it, that I've talked to about this thing. And like it's several, I don't know how many silos it is, but it's several buildings dug into the side of the hill that you can tour and walk through, and you can see where they would put this stuff in one room 1, room 2, and then bring it to room 3 to mix and then push it back out on the train. Like, right. That's literally what would happen. I would say maybe the majority. What's weird is, though, there seems to be a direct correlation between when we started using these type of weapons or this type of technology and then UAPs and stuff showing up. That seems to be almost like I equate it to my children being a little too loud and be like, walk upstairs, like, what are you doing up here?
Yeah. Yeah,
it's gnarly. I guess
I'm
saying gnarly.
The Foo Fighter thing right after the U.S. dropped the bombs on Japan, there was this huge uptick in what they call Foo Fighters in the 40s, right? Of these UFOs showing up, and it just there has to be some corner. I mean, there is a connection. Now, what's happening? I mean, that's anyone's guess, really. But at the same time, it just makes you think, man. That's what I was kind of asking. It's like, even when you're in, you only know what they want you to know. Yeah. So as a public, we feel like we know hardly. We don't know. And then, of course, this last year in 2023, you have the House Oversight Committee, and you have these whistleblowers that are coming out, like David Grush, that are saying the government, and now whatever pieces of that are, most likely non-government, right? These defense contractors that they've acquired, and they have, you crashed craft, and you go, when we tell a story like this, you go, well, yeah, I mean, that's completely plausible. Not only does David Grush have no reason to lie about this, and he's got whistleblower protection, but all it takes is a story like this to be like, for 20 years we had nuclear weapons an hour and a half north of Nashville, and no one really knew about it, right? So, what else could you be hiding? Where could you be hiding it? And we have these conversations about deep underground military bases and all these things that you hear whispers of, but as you say, it's like you're allowed to know what you know, and that's really it. And they keep you sort of compartmentalized or cordoned. They keep you in different boxes so that not everybody knows enough of it, of everything, right?
Which is a problem with understanding technology as a whole. Honestly, they talk about it. Some of the scientists and stuff have come forward. They're like, yeah, it's hard to improve things or solve these problems or understand what we're looking at when we have like one piece of 1,000. Like, and then you're counting on like someone to curry that information to another person. The thing with David Grush that's so interesting to me on like a personal level is I believe he forfeited his commission as an officer, and he was either an 04 or an 05, I believe, which means he's a very, very long career in the military, and then to forfeit that, I don't know what type of benefits he retained, but I believe he might have lost all of them. And so, like, I think that's what happened. I don't, so don't quote me. No. Okay, I love everyone in the Blurry world. Please don't hurt me. I believe that's what he said when he was on Rogan. And for me, like, someone to basically, I won't say throw it away, but to give up something they worked so hard for, that's what really makes me go, he wouldn't give it up for no reason. To be wrong or to lie seems crazy. To give up something you worked a whole career for to tell the truth because you feel like it has to be told, that makes sense to me.
It's a lot of credence. Yeah, I agree.
And I think that's the same method we apply a lot on our show, trying to figure out if it's telling us the truth or not. And as the show grows, obviously more and more people want to come on. We think this in the same lines of like, is this person, what do they have to gain from this? And a lot of people get really mad at the people who come on and disguise their voice and don't even have social media. And they're like, look, this is my story. I grew up. These are the things I saw. This is what I was a part of. And I get it. The wilder your story, the more knee-jerk reaction it will cause. But some of these people have nothing to gain. Don't even have a name on the show.
Yeah.
So what's the point? I mean, hoax us, I guess. It's funny because to go back to your previous discussion, I'm trying to get a retired, his name's Robert Solis, and we're trying to get him on the show. He had a nuclear event where a UFO disabled. He was there the night it happened. He wrote a book, and it disabled the nuclear missiles on base, and he had this interaction. And this was I think this was in the 50s or the 40s. So it's been going on a long time. He's one of those guys as old and he probably doesn't even know how to work his email. But those are the guys you want to have on and tell these stories. But this has been going on a long time is kind of my point.
Yeah, and it's right around the times we started messing with these, as soon as Oppenheimer put that bomb together for us, stuff started happening.
It's wild. And what do they have now? I mean, you can think about what the technology is today.
Dude, I think it's just, I don't know exactly what level the nuclear stuff is. We have the nuclear triad, I believe is what our country has. So we have air, land, and sea. Like we have that many nuclear assets at any given moment. It terrifies me because like our whole nuclear policy is built on the idea of mutual destruction. So if Russia launches, then we launch. However many they have, we have X amount more, or vice versa. Like, there's way too many of them. But like, I don't think they know how to properly dispose of them without.
When you need an SUV that's roomy for your friends and family, durable and ready to carry all your stuff, and equipped for adventure, Honda's here with the 2025 Honda CR-V. CR-V outperforms the pack with more style, more space, and more power, complete with state-of-the-art safety features and a 5-star safety rating. Honda's here for you with the 2025 Honda CR-V. Check it out at your local Honda dealer today.
Like, you can't just bury everything. Like, how far can you bury
stuff? Yeah.
It's just crazy that, like, some of it relies on, like, floppy disk technology that's the size of a dinner plate that doesn't exist anymore. And, like, that's all that's stopping it. Some kid in the middle of the Midwest in a silo just, like, changing out a floppy disk. That's keeping us out of nuclear winter. Like,
it's wild. All right. It's wild, yeah.
That was a crazy film.
Oppenheimer?
Yeah. It rattled my mind a lot.
It's the most beautiful movie I've watched in a long time.
It's heavy. It's like an epic scene of a movie. You know how that Nolan does this? He does like, there's like the music and it's all building. He does that for like 2 hours.
Yeah.
It's like most film guys will do it for like 2 minutes or the moment. And then he somehow managed to keep that level of intensity throughout the entire film. So you leave just in the state of like, oh man, I've got to ponder some things. But I kept thinking, man, if we had that tech then, what do we have now? What do we have?
Yeah.
I mean, you've seen the B-52 bombers they keep doing flyovers with. Is that what the B-whatever bombers? I always mess this up.
The stealth
bombers? Yeah. There's the nicknames are the spicy Dorito. I call it the final Dorito because if you see it, you're like, well, it's a wrap. We're done here.
That's what a lot of people say is the TR. I think it's the TR-3B is sort of the triangle UFO craft that the government has. So a couple guys have come on and said that UAPs are government craft, re-engineered. It's not that they got this tech from somewhere else, from crash sites. And then UFO
from Bob Lazar.
Yeah. UFOs are non-government craft. So you have both,
not ours.
You have both these things flying around at the same time. And so some people they put it all in one box and say, oh, it's all government. It's all a government hoax. I'm like, some are.
What do y'all think?
I tend to think that it's always more complex. All the above seems to be more the answer. It is out there. They do have reverse engineered UFO craft, and they are doing some things. A lot of people send us videos that look like holograms. They're doing things, but it's not all holograms, and it's not all government tech. A lot of this stuff falls outside of that, and especially the weirder ones. There was one in Mexico like last week. It looks like a spiky ball shaking in the sky, and then it stops. It just disappears, and then it's gone. And these things, they don't look like a human would build them and reverse engineer them. They look like they're from somewhere else, 1,000 years from now. I would say maybe 10 to 15% are ours and the rest are not. There's so many sightings, and there's so much that seems to be coming out, and more people are filming it. The sheer massive numbers, there's no way we can afford to produce this many crap with how many people are filming it. So that's my thought.
What do you think, Lukey?
I mean, listen, like things that happen like the Roswell event and these recovered craft obviously aren't man-made. So you have to create space for that in your paradigm. Now, if you are to believe Bob Lazar and other sort of whistleblowers that are saying that we are reverse engineering, then you got to think that at least something's come out of that. Now, the extent of that, I mean, I don't know. I think the scary thing is we don't know. We don't know how advanced. We had Ashton Forbes on in December talking about the disappearance of MH370. There's some very compelling video and evidence there of what appears to be orbs that you can purport are under sort of our control. However you want to splice that or split that hair. That's a really interesting and very, very terrifying realization that if that is, it kind of opens up Pandora's box for what's really going on. And just sort of our conversation about the secret nuclear bases, there's a lot that we don't know. And I think the difference now between that or us and Roswell in timing is that, we have the internet and we have this proliferation of information, and everybody has a camera on their phones in their pocket. You can't really control the outlets. You remember changing the TV I remember doing it for my grandfather.
Yeah.
There's 5 channels.
Yeah.
It was like click, 5 channels, and then you had your newspaper, and that was the way you got information, and that was the way you were told what was happening. We live in a much different time, and I think that's part of the reason that we are seeing all this disclosure is that the people that don't want things disclosed, for whatever reason, the government's a great answer to that. You can't keep a lid on everything. You can't anymore. And I think that forces you to sort of make concessions, however you want to navigate and push the narrative. If you're, a government entity or a government contractor, there's an allowance. You have to have now sort of an allowance for things because you can't just go flat denial. That doesn't work anymore. Considering, unless you tell it to just sort of play the game, everyone's crazy and there's nothing to see here, right? Which I mean,
that's the thing, right? Is that not that long ago, people's solution was just to read what was put in front of them and not question it.
Yeah.
I think pretty much since the 80s, there have been so many institutions that have been destroyed. Always thinking about that video where it shows like local news stations from all over the country, and like their starting and ending line is all the exact same. Like they chop it up, and it's just like one video too, and then it becomes like 30 videos of like blah blah blah. They're all saying the same thing.
Yep.
There just seems to be, we over question and under analyze, if that makes sense. At least this is my opinion. Like for me, the UAP thing, it makes sense to me. It all makes sense to me. Like that there's some sort of craft, however they got here, whatever, especially because we're messing with nukes. They're like, what are you apes doing? We got to figure that out. And then that makes a ton of sense to me. The next thing that makes sense to me is that the government's like, what's that? Like, what do you got there, buddy? Because that's literally what we did and have done after every war. How NASA was founded. Because, all things being equal, like, what are you going to do with all those scientists who were working on all those different things? Are you going to, like, leave them to Russia or to other different parts of the world? Like, you can't. They were doing all those things.
So it's the acquisition of assets, right? It's like you're acquiring these assets when these happen to be, intellectual assets. And then so perhaps the same thing's happening with technology. I agree. I believe that. I believe that's a lot of what's happening sort of on our end, and what Grush is talking about, and what the other whistleblowers in the same space are saying.
Yeah,
is that we're attempting to acquire these, and we want to have them before the North Koreans and before the Russians and everybody else gets them, right? Because it's a power play, regardless of how it works.
It's Iron Man 2.
But there's a lot of it is not us, right? And I do believe that.
Oh yeah. We did a members episode with a guy who, it was called The Invisible Highway. Those who want to go check that one out. And Backyard Experiment. So his whole claim was that UFOs fly out of we can't detect them because our eyes see a certain frames per second, right? But if you slow down, you get some video footage and you slow it down, you can actually film UFOs flying through the sky anywhere.
At a different frame rate, yeah.
At 240 frames per second, you slow it down, you'll see things going very quickly. Not birds, not insects.
Yep, bugs, yeah.
Did y'all do this?
Yes, we did this, and our members did this. So we had hundreds of people who listened to our show send us videos catching stuff flying through the sky. So probably thousands of these things at any given moment are flying undetected. But all over the world, people were sending us videos, and they were catching UFOs as clear as day.
I mean, so that makes sense. I mean, what I'm thinking of right now is if you catch, like if a helicopter's taking off and you're filming at a certain frame rate, the propellers don't move.
Yep.
That's literally what I'm thinking of. So like if that dumb principle works, what you're saying can also work. And I'm just filtering stuff through my simple mind. So
the more Luke and I get into these things, we realize that there's a lot of things that humans just can't detect, whether we were able in the past when we were originally created to be able to sense and see these things that we can no longer now.
Uh-huh.
And it seems, Zach, that human beings can receive telepathic communication, but we don't know how to send it out. But we can receive, because so many people these entities will communicate with people. So we're somewhere in the middle of the equation when it comes to some of this technology. And I think that it's easy just to lump it into the spiritual category and say, oh, it's all just spirit activity, but what does that even really mean? So we unpack those ideas a lot on the show, but it definitely seems like there's a lot of craft out there. That's kind of what we've uncovered. There's a lot of craft.
It's all very weird. Yeah.
The U.S. military is not going to let someone visit us and not get a piece. Is all I'm going to say. Like if something's crashed here, we know about it. You know what I mean? Like if there is technology that is world changing technology, I don't know who's the best keeper of that. But somebody has to be. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like we can't just leave that to everyone, right?
Well, it reminds me of a recent episode we did on the MH370. It looks like this plane goes through some sort of portal technology. And originally it looks like UFO activity, but then, we broke it down with our guest, and he said it could have been reverse engineered tech. And they knew this was going to happen, and they sent it. It might be a government conspiracy and not a UFO conspiracy, not an extra-dimensional conspiracy, however you want to say that, or a fourth kind. It looked more government is kind of his conclusion. So it is advanced tech in the sense that, wow, we can maybe open up portals now, but it still could be humans doing it. So I don't know. That's
because we have no idea. We have no idea.
But I think they get the technology from crash sites. That's the thing.
For sure. Like, I mean, objectively, like I look at it like this. Imagine just like picking up a piece of a tire you've never seen before from like a road wreck and from like a tragic car accident. And you're like, okay, I'm now going to build a car, but all you have is a tire, like a piece of rubber.
Right.
It also is a little concerning how free the information is very recently, right? Like people forget, like not that long ago, it was just like crazy to even have these type of discussions. Blurry creatures couldn't exist a few years ago, and now it's BlurryCon taking over everything. Which I will be at come hell or high water this year.
Let's go. Yes,
I will be at. I can't remember. I think it was I doing Mr. Beast? I don't know.
We're gonna put you in a Sasquatch suit if you keep telling us.
Yeah, you are.
Yeah,
no, dude, I'll be there. I'll be there.
Well, Zach, we started the episode with a ghost story from Afghanistan. Do you want to do the Okinawa thing at the end? We can cut this part of the edit if you want, and you want to end with that, because I think it's a pretty good bookends if you want to.
Sure. Yeah.
So we started the episode with your own ghost stories and being and I love this, our sort of our resident military expert, veteran. You are a veteran. You are our veteran with a sign.
Yeah.
The place in Okinawa that is supposed to be most haunted is a place called Kadena Air Base, Air Force installation there. There is a building there called 2283. Reportedly, it was demolished. It was at one point considered the single most haunted house in the entire U.S. military. It was so bad that no one would stay there. And apparently, as you said, in the 70s, the story goes that a U.S. Air Force officer murders his entire family, and then a family next door starts to have sort of paranormal experiences. So there's a woman that washes her hair in the sink and comes and asks you if you will fix the shower. There's a daycare next door, which is wild in of itself, but there are stories of children throwing toys over the fence because the little kids on the other side are asking them to. There are ghostly phones ringing, faucets turn themselves on by themselves, curtains open, and even glowing houses. If that's not enough to scare you on this base, there are supposedly Marine guards. This is what I was going to ask you about, some of the Marine stories. Apparently, at the old Gate 3 at Camp Hansen, there is a ghostly Marine that hangs out at the gate defending American troops because purportedly the ghosts of World War II, Japanese soldiers show up at the gate at the same time. These happen so often that Marine guards have refused to stand guard at Gate 3, and eventually this was closed. So who knows? Didn't like smoking because apparently, like when you lit a cigarette, the specter soldier would disappear. It seems like, as you guys talked about in your story, you guys see a lot, but I think for Marines not to want to stand guard because of this event happened so often seems to lead credence to that. I mean, to that being a real thing. And I think my favorite story out of the airbase, Zach, is that there is a samurai warrior, because across the street from the base there is a tomb of samurais. There's a samurai warrior that seems to rides its horse through the barracks and through potentially people's living rooms on base from time to time. And there's a similar samurai warrior that rides the road to Camp Foster heading to base housing. So if you're in the military and you end up in Okinawa, it seems to be the wildest place you could be stationed, maybe other than Afghanistan, based on what we heard of Afghanistan, because you've got samurai warriors, you've got World War II Marine guards guarding your base from the ghosts of World War II Japanese soldiers, and you have the single most haunted house, if it still exists, U.S. military house on the planet, at the Air Force Base, Kadena Air Base in Japan, Okinawa. So any thoughts on that, Zach, as our military expert?
As a military expert, this is how I start my arc and start going on.
I love it. Yeah.
All the channels. Dude, I have heard really weird stuff about, was it Hansen? Yeah.
Uh-huh. Camp Hansen.
So the thing is, when they do these rotations, what they're mainly doing is peacekeeping missions, and like sometimes it's mainly infantry. It is infantry units that will respond there, and they act as they try to be a force for good in the area, and also a presence, right? So the idea is, the reason that these units are there is in any given moment, even with technology and all the stuff we have, it does take time to traverse the globe. So this unit will respond to floods or anything that can happen in that part of the world. And so, but they're there, they're on the base all the time. They're not allowed to leave for the most part. There's not a lot of stuff to do, and it's a bunch of young dudes. So I have heard weird stories of the gate guard and different things like that, because they're just there. I think all that stuff's trapped there, because that's also the site of the Battle of Okinawa. So
right.
There was some gnarly stuff that happened there. And just like Afghanistan, I don't think it's got anywhere to go. I think that stuff stays. And we just put pavement. We put pavement in a parking lot, and then we built a base there.
That's crazy.
Pave paradise and put up a parking lot. Excuse me.
That's right. So purportedly the most haunted and scariest place in the military reach is Okinawa. So if you end up there, good luck with the samurai horsemen and the gate guards and the lady washing her hair. It's all very creepy. But Zach, always good to have you on, my friend. I know that you have a new project. I want to give you a chance to talk about what you're doing.
Yeah.
Especially with the sign, you've got a great platform. You really work. I mean, you do amazing work to get the awareness out to veterans. I know we have a crisis on our hands with veteran suicide, and that's a battle you pick up and fight every day. And I mean, hats off to you, because our veterans need to be taken care of, and they need to be reminded that they continue to have value as human beings. And I know that's really the tip of the spear, and what you really push for. And so, of course, hats off to you, because that's that's the Lord's work, man. But you've also started a new project in addition to your channel. So I wanted you to have a chance to share a little about what you're doing over there, and we could send people to check out your show.
Yeah, and again, thank y'all so much. I love you both so dearly. It's I'm always fascinated by the beautiful, unpredictable journey of life that puts people in the moments that we are. From things you done, Luke, to on the road to like right here, like this. You can't make this stuff up. I love it. Yeah. No, I have recently started a podcast. It's called After Action Podcast. It's you can find it on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple, anywhere you can get podcasts, because Nate literally walked me through how to do it. So
that's good.
Yeah, shouts out. But no, I wanted to try and do something different and to tell stories in a different way. And I just had, from talking to you guys and like communicating with y'all about this, it's something that was really on my heart for a little bit. And I just wanted to do it. And through certain circumstances that happened, I've been able to be around people who just felt like they had a story they wanted to tell. And so, my first guest was one of the cops who responded to the incident at the Nashville school in March of 2023.
Yeah.
And it's the first ever interview he's ever done. And it's just me and him talking about it. And I felt so honored that he wanted to do that and to hold that space with him, and then to kind of try and build out and have people talk about their experience, not just in the military, outside of it. And I'm starting to grow and get more of it. And it's been fun. It's hard. There's stress involved every time I upload anything.
Yeah.
Because it's, as you all know, when you're creative or creating stuff, no one sees 99% of the things that you see, but you're like, why did I have to make that face? Or like, there's weird things. But it's been a way for me to try and learn more about my service and others. And talking to the most recent guest is Tyler Vargas Andrews, who was one of the surviving members of the suicide bombing event in Afghanistan at Kaya. He lost an arm, he lost a leg. His body's scarred by war, and he still gets up every single day and gets after it. We talked a little bit about his life and that moment and how it felt, and just to see him, the way he's moving and continuing to honor those who didn't come home. Like, that's the type of stuff that I'm focusing on now. So I know John, Chris, but I have to get you guys on.
Well, come on, baby. Let's go.
But it's fun. And like, I want to do something to have really kind of to flesh out the experience, because it teaches me a lot, and I hope people take something from it. So it's been fun, but it's a whole new world, and I honestly wouldn't be here without the help of y'all. So I can't thank y'all enough.
So check it out. Check it out. After Action Podcast. Of course, you can connect with Zack at Veteran with a Sign on Instagram and on YouTube. And dude, we always love getting to chat, man. Love our lunchtime. Love our lunches and get-togethers. You're a friend of the show and also a friend outside the show. So we always love to have you on, brother. Great to.
Hey, you guys have like a secret lunch spot apparently where you guys hang out.
You've been there, dude.
You've been there. You've been there. Ruin it for us. Yeah.
So don't play that game.
But all the people in Vision listening to the show, it's like some sort of like Bigfoot hut on the mountain somewhere in south of town, where we meet and we bring lunches and we discuss blurry things. Homemade lunches. But dude, I love After Action. That is that's a good name. I thought about that when you said it. I was like, that's a good name, dude. That's get that thing out there.
It comes from the term. So after you're in contact, something happens, whatever it is you do. Yeah. In the military, we call it an after action report or after action review. Yeah. In the civilian world, they call it a post-mortem. I actually kind of like post-mortem a little more for.
That's a little more depressing. That's a little sad,
A little more, macabre.
I've recorded other episodes. My friend Austin, who's a YouTube fitness guy who started his own brand. I talked to a Nashville police officer who wrote a book about his time, fighting the crime in town. Like, I'm really just trying to like learn, and it's been fun, and it's hard. But like, again, and I can't stress this enough. The people in the Blurry verse are fervent, ravenous people, and like I've never. And people like literally like, are you Veteran with a Sign? I'm like, yeah. And like, I heard about you on Blurry Creatures. I was like, this is crazy. This is crazy.
That's what our buddy who runs the Bigfoot Museum in the Blue Ridge Mountains said. He said people were just coming in every day, all day. I heard you on Blurry Creatures. It's wild. We thank you guys out there listening.
We're grateful.
And I don't know what it is that just a couple of dummies asking questions. But before you go, Zach, you got to give us, what's your favorite military 80s movie? Come on. There's so many good 80s films.
It might not even be 80s, though. It might not be 80s.
It has to be 80s, though. Luke said it's got to be 80s.
I didn't say that, actually.
He told me. He said, I got to ask him. And it has to be 80s. We got Full Metal Jacket.
That's a good one.
We got Platoon.
That's a good one.
We got Hamburger Hill. We got Born on the 4th of July.
What is the one
we got so
Heartbreak
many.
Ridge. Is Heartbreak Ridge 80s?
Purple Hearts.
Stripes.
So I would say
Uncommon Valor.
Of that
Glory. Empire of the Sun.
Empire of the
Sun.
So
many. There's so many, dude.
So I'm gonna two-part this one. One, I would say 80s. So the 80s, if you're gonna go for military accuracy, Full Metal Jacket, the military experience that he portrays in Full Metal Jacket of like boot camp and stuff. And so obviously, what's his name, shooting the drill instructor is not literally what would happen, but the metaphor is that he broke a man through the training. But like that, the way he interacts with them, so I don't know if you guys know this or not, but Arlie Ermy was a technical advisor for whatever actor they had in place. And he's like, no, do it like this. And the guy just couldn't do it. He just couldn't do it. And so they fired the actor on the spot. And they're like, you do it. And that's how he became an actor. Literally, like, this is how you do it. So that one's probably the most accurate. Predator is like the biggest military movie. I always say it's like Avengers Zero version 0 because it's the biggest stars of the time. They're jacked. They're huge. You know, the behind the scenes, they're making fun of each other because their arms aren't big enough. They're like, it's just a bunch of dudes with machine guns. Like, it's incredible. But
you also have Rambo First Blood. And you got Red Dawn as well.
But I'm thinking the most action-packed, right? But this is a sleeper. One of the ones that I can always watch because it's just hysterical to me. And this isn't 80s. Is a 90s movie. It's Under Siege.
Dude, that's a great call. That is a really good call.
The movie, everyone's doing cocaine. Like, Tommy Lee Jones is out of his mind. Gary Busey is out of his mind. And
yeah, they're so wild.
You've got the cook. Steven Seagal's a cook.
I'm just a cook.
A lowly cook saves the U.S. Navy.
Yeah, like, it's crazy. He's like, Casey, and there's like, who's on that ship? And he goes, Casey Ryback. Like, he's even got like
like anybody knows who that is.
Yeah, he pulled your ass out of Grenada or something, like whatever it is he said.
Oh my gosh,
that's probably my tier. But all right, favorite military movie might be, but my favorite. Hang on, wait, I've got a whole list in my head because there's so many good ones. Like, but 80s is in that order. I don't want to go anymore.
I like it.
Yeah,
thanks, Zach. That's good. It's good stuff.
All right, thanks, man.
Dude, thank y'all so much.
Yeah, dude.
Until we meet again at the old secret spot.
Later.